Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Rishika, and at SME 10X, we are very pleased to introduce this exclusive webinar series in partnership with SAP. For those of you who joined our last session, you know that we talked about a very important and relevant subject, which was around e-commerce. And today we're back and we're talking about an equally important subject, something that's on top of every business owner's mind, which is experience management in the banking sector. We do realize now that this is a very technical subject, and that's the reason why we've planned an agenda that's a mix of case studies, demos, presentations, and of course the much awaited interactive Q&A session at the very end. So I hope you all sit back, enjoy, and take home some insights from today's session. So let's kickstart. I'd like to introduce the first speaker for today, Kashif Al-Aziz, who is the Regional Leader of Financial Services at SAP. Kashif, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. So my name is Kashif Aziz, and I am the leader for financial services for Southern Europe and Middle East and Africa at SAP. And can you please put the slide deck on? So today we're going to talk about experience management in banking, and really I'm glad and thrilled to have some of my colleagues and as well as a partner and our customer joining in today from Bank Muscat and sharing their experiences as to what they have gone through in terms of implementing and transforming their organization when it comes to experience management. But before I do that, I just wanted to set the stage and provide you some perspective that these folks are going to be talking about today. Next slide, please. So if you look at SAP in a nutshell, SAP has been around for the last 3 to 4 decades in banking, about 12,000 customers globally, and across 140 some countries. But what's really important is the transaction volume that we carry for our customers and the support that we give to our customers in terms of executing their transactions. And the pride that we have is not only are we supporting the top tier organizations across the globe, but we're really supporting niche specific market unit leaders and niche players and sort of category banks as well. And the breadth of solutions that we have cover across retail banking, commercial, capital markets, central banks, and of course, more recently, we've started to work a lot with fintechs across the globe. Next slide, please. And when we look at Qualtrics, that is by in itself is a powerhouse itself, where it's a market leader for experience management, not only on a global level, but also in the Middle East. And you can see from the logos there, and we're running about 700 programs with Qualtrics and FSI at the moment. So clearly a solution that is recognized for its experience management expertise. So next slide, please. So this brings to us to why we're all really here. Well, when we ask a very simple question, using our own tools and our benchmarking and using the tools that we have from Qualtrics, CEOs as to are they providing premier services to their customers, 80% of the CEOs agree that they are providing one of the best services that they can. Well, when we ask the same question with the customers, their customers, the gap is really significant, as you can see. And most of these customers believe that the nature of their relationship with the bank is primarily transactional. Well, that's really the gap that we wanted to sort of address today. Next slide, please. So if you look at why this gap probably exists is because the journey is really complicated, and the journey is different for every customer, every segment. It has different and multiple touch points, and the real challenge for banks is to constantly chase and match the pace of that customer expectation and innovate and provide newer and modified services along the way. Next slide, please. So when we look at how we address this kind of challenge, we really look at it in 2 formats. We look at the operational data, which is on the right-hand side, and that is something that we're all accustomed to in banking. It's something that we live by, we swear by. Most of our decisions are based on this data. But really, what we're looking at from on the other side is really the experience data, and that's not really coming out from the operational data, is it? So that's really the bulk of the matter is it's all about how is the customer, the partners, the employees experiencing the product, using the services, and their perception of your brand and your services. Next slide, please. So if I go a little deeper onto this, on the left-hand side, we're pretty familiar with when a product segment is not performing in a market category or in a region, or when the new account openings are on a decline in a particular region. But what's really important to understand to offer services or to improve services for a bank is to understand, why is this happening? Is the customer getting a better offer? Is it a price point issue? Is it a comprehensiveness of the solution? Is it a customer sat issue? And that really sort of fuels the right level of cross-sell and upsell, improving processes, improving products, and really preempting those issues that are coming in the customer journey. Next slide, please. So if you look at a typical journey, right? We talked about touch points in the previous slide. So there are multiple touch points. You might start off on an email front, go on to a mobile application, but then eventually, as you're going throughout the processes of buying the product or buying a service from a bank, all the way to recommending, hopefully, you're going to go through multiple variable channels. You're going to go through multiple experiences. You will have different experiences along the way. And the idea is to measure not only from an operational perspective, which is the revenue that is coming in, the call center issue resolution, the consumption of the services, and really the status of the customer, but more in terms of what is the motivation of the customer to buy across a particular channel or based on the journey. What is the value that the product is bringing into the customer? What delight that the customer goes through when using the product, and of course the impact that it has on the customer's daily life, which eventually results into loyalty, which is net promoting score. Next slide, please. So if you look at typical use cases that we've been looking at with our banking customers across the globe, really branch experience and contact center is something that was really important. But in today's times, where we're all dealing with the pandemic crisis, the digital experience, the brand tracking, the product experience, and the refinement of the product is where customers are coming to us. And that's the most important topic of the agenda these days. And we're going to talk more about in the dialogue with our customer today. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to give, before I pass it on to Corinne and Rami, I just wanted to sort of cover brief anecdotes and on why we believe that experience management is the breakthrough for transformation for any bank. So when we look at the first part, that's a no-brainer, right? That in today's society and today's times especially, the predicting and the responding to changing customer needs is absolutely important, and that really goes into the crux of assessment, of constantly listening. From a personalization and product perspective, we need to go beyond offering products, but actually crafting products for customers in segments. I think that's important. The third part is important because it needs to go through the entire life cycle of the organization, from onboarding of a customer all the way to disbursement of a loan or a term deposit for that matter, right? And really, the fourth part is very interesting, where the experience data and the culmination of combined with operations data can help organizations like banks figure out newer partnership models, newer segments like SMEs in today's world, right? So that you can listen into the customer, but also look at the partners and how you can combine forces, content aggregators, insurance, fintechs, to name a few, right? And last, certainly not the least, banks have always been the purveyors of data. It's the time to monetize that data effectively by unifying it with experience data. Next slide, please. So Qualtrics is a trial and tested solution, as I mentioned. These are some of the testimonials from our customers, and a payback time is amazing in terms of less than 3 months, in terms of really gauging and holding on to your customer. Last slide, please. So with that, before I pass it on to Rami and Corinne, just a quick perspective on what we're doing today in light of the COVID-19 crisis, and some of these offerings is what we believe can help our customers, and we're offering free of charge. And you're more than welcome to look at this link, which will be shared, and you can have a look further. Is really 3 aspects. One is the front line, listening to our employees that are at the front line, what's working, what's not working, and constant assessment. The second is actually having the pulse of the customer to understand what do they need, what do they expect in today's time from a bank, and really accelerating transformation in ushering some of the customers towards the digital part and reducing over-the-counter transaction, which seems to be the biggest challenge for banks today. And last, certainly not the least, is that digital door, which is always open to hear back and get feedback from partners, from agents, from content providers, from customers and employees to further refine and build that resilience. So with that, I'll pass it on to Rami and Codine. Please take it away.
So, hey everyone, thank you for joining today. So I'm Rami, I'm Experience Management Consultant with Numetrics. I focus on both customer and employee experience, and I'm very happy to have Codine here today, which is one of my favorite clients, where he will be discussing his journey working with Bank Muscat, which is one of the leading flagship financial institutions in the Middle East. So Codine, can you briefly introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. Thank you, Rami and Kashi, for having me today. And welcome to all our guests. I am pretty sure that we have a pretty good number of practitioners all around the region. My name is Codine Karaja. I am heading the customer experience function for the largest financial institution in Oman. And in the next 20 minutes, we'll go through the journey of the customer experience transformation for Bank Muscat. So let's.
Thank you, Codine. So can we start with the slides? And Codine, can you just tell me initially why? What is the reason that made you go into a end-to-end customer experience transformation? I know it's not a short journey. So could you tell us a bit more what was the driver? And if you can start looking at the slides, that would also be great.
Basically, the answer will be very straightforward. We are the largest bank here in Oman. So theoretically, we have enough market share and comfort and so on. But historically, we realized that dinosaurs disappeared. We are not a dinosaur size-wise. We are more like a overweighted elephant. So the new management team decided that it's high time to make this overweighted elephant start dancing, and ideally start dancing in an easily breakable environment surrounded by glass. That was the trigger. Market share is not enough. Growth options are limited. So let's focus on actual retention and cross-sell.
Amazing. Thank you, Codine. I think it's a very nice analogy. So if we go to the next slide, can you just tell me a bit, so what was the end operating model that you wanted to achieve to shed the weight?
The core piece here is a full understanding of the end-to-end value chain. It's basically how we make money and how we make money in a sustainable way. So we put together an overall framework that we will go through it in the next minutes, looking from the moment we design our products and services, how we market our products and services, how we sell them, and how we manage the after-sales interactions with our customers, the customer service, the customer engagement moments. In the same time, we realized that we need as much as possible data. It's a paradox because as a bank, we operate with huge amount of data, but the meaning that you get from this data can be very tricky. And if you don't aggregate these sources in a meaningful story, to transform the data and information into actionable insights, it's useless. So we realized that the core feed of the business strategy should rely on the voice of the customer, the voice of our employees, what's going on in the world, the market factors, and the benchmarks in the region or globally. Next slide.
If you allow me, Codine, but I know it was a very big challenge. So I'd like to ask you, so what are the different organizational building blocks that you targeted, and how did you go forward in your transformation? So where did you start from? So if we can move on to the next slide, I think that would be helpful.
I'll start with the strategy, because there is something I'd like to clarify for everybody from the beginning. You hear all the time, not only in the banking sector but across industries, that you have a digital strategy, you have a customer experience strategy, you have a marketing strategy. For us, there are not such things as strategies. You have a core strategy, which is the business strategy, which fundamentally is addressing two questions: where to play and how to win. And you align the whole company around the answers to these two questions. That means you need to have a governance in place, you need to have a specific organizational culture that is defining how you want your company to look like. You need to have some measurements in place, a robust KPI system to know if you are closer or too far from your targets. And you need to have this framework which is building capabilities at all the levels. So in a nutshell, we talk about these 6 blocks: strategy, culture, data, and measurement system. And
so I think you're talking about 3,800 employees in Bank Muscat. So that's quite a lot of employees, a lot of departments. So where was the starting point in order to get this transformation running, to get this visibility? So if we can go to the next slide, please.
Yeah, basically, the start point was, in a way, you have these 2 approaches, classical 2 approaches, top-down or bottom-up. In our case, was a bit of both, actually, because definitely from top management, there was an awareness that we need to have something different in place. And this is where actually the overall governance started to be shaped. But in the same time, we realized that we need to build on the capabilities of all our people, starting from the front lines. So we said, let's go and see which are our top customer journeys, how we are making money from both retail or corporate business sides, conventional or Islamic divisions. But let's look and select the top 5 key customer journeys in both business segments. But let's analyze them end to end. And this is where Qualtrics was actually extremely helpful, and we'll show some details a bit later, because it was for the first time in the bank to provide end-to-end visibility, what is going on in these journeys, touch point by touch point. Having all the stakeholders in the same room with the data on the table, and following certain methodology in order to make sense around this whole data, getting some initial measurements in terms of how we knew how we were doing from the internal efficiency and the whole KPI system perspective. But frankly speaking, our customers, they don't know and they don't care about our internal KPIs. And this is fundamentally a mind shift. Internally, you look at products, you look at processes, and you look at technology. The customer, for us as customers of any company in the world, will look at outcome, what we get. We look at effort, how much time and energy we spend in order to get that outcome, okay? And we look at the overall emotion, how we feel during this journey. So as long as people are aware more and more at all levels, okay, what actually we should focus on, what is the successful outcome that customer is looking to pay the money for, it's becoming much easier not to be dragged around by your day-to-day activities.
I imagine this is purely, this data was was being you were provided by this data by leveraging the Qualtrics technology. So being able to overlay the operational data, which is the data that you have in your existing systems, with the experience data that you're collecting from Qualtrics. So I think you touched on something which is very interesting, where you talked about governance. And so if we move 2 slides ahead, could you tell me a bit, so what was the governance that you've adopted in the bank? Why did you adopt this governance? And what were the barriers that you were trying to overcome? So if we can just move 2 slides forward.
Yeah, basically the governance had in mind different levels. We all know banks are organized in a very silo approach. The hierarchy is pretty visible and straightforward. So in order to tackle bottom-up and top-down in the same time, we had, first of all, the number one decision group is the Executive Management Committee that was getting regular updates about what is going on across these end-to-end journeys. And part of this governance, the conversation started around what are the customer-centric KPIs that we need to have as top management team and how to cascade. That was one part of the conversation. And then you have something that we called customer experience governance groups, which were built around the key sponsors and the key stakeholders around these journeys, where you have senior management representatives, but also lower levels. Very important is to give voice to the people who are actually executing things in these journeys, because fundamentally they were the co-creators of all the improvement solutions, and we allowed them to present the outcomes of different workshops and different sessions in front of the senior management. We basically shifted the silos to a transversal view. There is also another exercise happening in terms of reviewing the organizational structure to try to be more customer-centric and to plug together different units that have something to do across this value chain. So in the beginning, the challenge was how, and it was a learning curve, how to actually make all these people to come and work together. So we stepped out of the office. We organized a series of workshops in the hotels. And after the first couple of them, we realized it's good to have somebody from the top management initially in the room to give a direction and to speak about the overall scope and vision and so on. But later on, people became a bit uncomfortable to speak about pain points, because that was the overall discussion in a workshop. What are our pain points? In front, they were a bit reluctant to speak in front of the big guys. So we changed a bit the approach. We said, okay, let's get rid of the big guys, after 1 hour, and let the energy and the thoughts to flow around in the room. And that proved to be extremely impactful, because people felt at ease, and they were extremely helpful and creative to come up with different ideas. And then we grouped them. We'll go ahead later on to explain a little bit how we did this.
I think
again, this governance is working we started to instill a pace. Every 2 weeks, this is the outcome from a workshop. These were the problems. These are the solutions. This is the priority, and this is how we move forward. So initially every 2 weeks, later on every 2 months, and fundamentally the bottom line was to implement in 1 year a huge number of initiatives. If you focus, you can do it.
So I think the governance was a key component of the transformation. It allowed for alignment across, so reduction of the silos across departments, creating cross-functional teams with different seniority levels, and also empowering the more junior people who actually know what is happening inside the bank, right?
Yeah.
So if we move 3 slides ahead, you mentioned that you've implemented quite a lot of initiatives by empowering these people. So could you tell me a bit more on how many initiatives you've implemented? What was the impact as well of these initiatives? And just give me a couple of examples of like short, medium, and long-term initiatives.
Yeah, as I was mentioning, we tackled initially the top 10 end-to-end customer journeys, the most critical ones. And during the brainstorming sessions, we realized that we have plenty of pain points. We utilize simple tools that you have it in all the lean toolboxes, like an effort effect matrix. So how much effort you put to implement something and what will be the impact. And the teams actually, they made their own prioritization, presented in the CX governance groups to get the blessing from the senior management to align these initiatives in the overall other projects, because we are a big company and we are running a lot of projects. I'll give you a few examples on both initiatives focusing on customers, but also initiatives focusing on our employee experience. So one of the common things we realized across the journeys was that the customers were expecting to receive regular status updates about what's going on after they applied for a product or a service. And the way they prefer this is to have the notification in a very simple SMS message. And this was a principle translated in all the journeys. We set expectations about the overall turnaround time. We set expectations about what will gonna happen next. So the target was to reduce the effort, because the customers initially were approaching us, what happened? Calling the branches, calling the call centers, what's going on, which is extremely painful and annoying. The moment we shifted this, you start seeing some results. On the other side of the story, internally, we realized our employees were very much complaining about the complexity and the big number of products and services that we have. It was very hard for them to learn them properly and to give the key information about these products and services to the customers. So we created an internal portal, which we like to call it our internal Google, with structuring this information for the main products and services in a very simple and meaningful way. Because we wanted to not only to preach customer centricity, but to apply it accordingly also with our employees, we went to the end users and asking them, guys, how you would like this information to be shown on the screen? What type of questions are you receiving from your customers? So we can design the layout of these products and services on the screen based on your input. So we ended up, and I'm pretty sure you remember as well, you were part in the beginning of that amazing journey. We created few simple prototypes. We invited in the room personal bankers with different levels of experience, also new joiners, also experienced people. And they voted actually for the final layout, and that was rolled out and implemented. And currently we have over there more than 50 products and services available at the click distance.
Amazing. So I see the amount of insights that you were able to collect from the voice of customer, from your voice of customer program, and translating these insights into actions. So if we move to the next slide, I know it's a spoiler alert, but or the one after that, just to communicate what was the impact that you've managed to achieve, and what is the level of maturity that you currently are at right now.
So, in a nutshell, we were basically having some customer sensitivity, classical business segments, and so on. We built a customer centricity maturity model, and we are assessing this maturity level now every year, breaking down the maturity on several dimensions and measuring how we are doing for each dimension. So right now we started to become much more customer driven, narrowing the projects, narrowing the initiatives, and focusing more, which actually is helping everyone, including IT. Very important to mention the agile methodology that helped us to speed up, basically to speed up the implementation and the effectiveness of utilizing IT resources. There is something called our CX tribe, where small IT initiatives are plugged and delivered in maximum 1 to 2 months. Bottom line results, improving the NPS score 5 points in a year, the relational NPS score, and increasing the non-interest income revenues by 9%. We realized that our digital channels are the main areas of delight, and this is what the customers are pointing out. And I'd like to add one more thing for all the banks, not only the banks in the region. We need to move slowly to realize what actually are the businesses that we are in. Because you hear a lot about products, and we are in the credit card business or we are in the loan business. No, we are not in these businesses. We are actually in the business of creating and providing solutions for different customer needs and problems. We are in the business of providing education for somebody's kid. We are here to provide solutions for the health of somebody's family, and probably the key direction is to create as many as possible across industries partnerships, ecosystem partnerships.
So I think banks are in the system of providing experiences that are changing and shaping people's lives, I imagine. So I think, thank you, Codine, for your insights and for sharing the story. I know you have a long way to go now. So without further ado, I think we'll pass it to Irlar, who will be sharing with us a demo of Qualtrics and showcasing how banks actually leverage the experience data. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Irla and I lead a team of solution consultants at Qualtrics, covering both the European and Middle East markets. I've been with Qualtrics for 5 years, so I've worked with a lot of our biggest customers in the Middle East. Today, we're going to show you a very brief demo of the Qualtrics Experience Management platform. I'm going to give a brief demonstration of how the Qualtrics platform is typically used by our banking customers, both in the context of measuring your customer experience, but also how Qualtrics can be used for your entire experience management program. The Qualtrics capabilities are typically broken into 3 core areas. The first is the ability to listen to customers across all the different channels that they interact with you. This can range from transferring money using a mobile app, contacting support via WhatsApp, or leaving feedback about a branch on Google Reviews. The second is understanding their feedback and sharing it across the organization. Qualtrics has tons of analytics tools such as TextIQ to analyze the open text that is coming from different sources, or Stats IQ to run deep statistical analysis on all that data. Combined with operational data, this simplifies and makes recommendations of the areas that will have the most business impact to all frontline staff. Thirdly, Qualtrics provides the ability to act not only on individual pieces of feedback, but also create strategic initiatives that impact the company bottom line. In the current climate, there is a big shift towards digital experience. Customers who previously went into branches are now going online. For a lot of banks, this is now the primary method of interaction with customers. On screen, you can see an example of how we can collect feedback from your customers as they use your website. By clicking on the feedback button, the customer can leave feedback about their banking experience. Along with their response, Qualtrics will also record the customer behavior and how they got to the website. In the current climate, you need to be able to adapt quickly. In this real example from one of our customers, they are measuring how the mortgage experience is for first-time buyers given current difficulties this market is having. Switching to mobile, you will see the exact same experience on the mobile version of the website. We can target customers who are going to leave the website. Typically, when a new customer leaves, you don't know who they are or why they've left your website. However, with Qualtrics, your customers will tell you why they didn't complete a transaction. This will increase your conversion rate. The same goes for your existing customers who use your app. You can measure all parts of the customer journey as shown here. This can be extended across other channels as well. For instance, the trend for a lot of banks is to move towards more digital support channels. If I choose WhatsApp as my support channel, then the best way to get feedback about my experience is on WhatsApp as well. In this example, you can see a chatbot asking questions on WhatsApp. Channels like this will dramatically increase your response rates. Your frontline staff will get notified in real time when your customers have had a negative experience so that they can close the loop. You can see on screen that as a manager, a ticket has been created for me and I can manage the ticket on my mobile phone. When I go into the ticket, I can see exactly what the customer said and I have access to the customer profile and transaction information. The full close the loop process can be managed here. Qualtrics dashboards can be used to analyze and act on all the data that has been collected. This isn't just data from all the different listening posts. This includes operational data, reputation data, and voice analytics, industry benchmarks, text analytics, response rate data, closed loop analysis, and so on. And the platform allows you to create different views for different levels of the organization. On the left-hand side, you can see reports for executives, branch managers, support agents, and digital managers, among others. Looking at the dashboard that's up on screen, the executive does not just see experience metrics like NPS and CSAT. They can also see operational data. In this example, we see revenue and customer lifetime value. Predict IQ is also showing the executive a prediction on how many customers will churn. Scrolling down, the executive will probably want to see the data broken out by key customer segments, like country. By clicking on Saudi Arabia, the data automatically filters, and we can now see the feedback for all the regions in that country from all the different sources across the entire customer journey. To show another example, I'm going to switch to a branch manager view. These are role-based dashboards, so the store manager for Riyadh automatically sees their own data. They can see that CSAT, has dropped, and this is linked to a drop in staff engagement for that store. Scrolling down, we see that the branch is performing worse than others. This is a sign that the fall in CSAT is a local issue. The mistake a lot of organizations make is to focus on the area with the worst score. However, key driver analysis shows us both the score and the statistical correlation of NPS to each of the drivers. In this example, we can see that availability of staff is having the biggest impact on the customer experience. This is highlighted by our focus areas capability that shows us that in-branch availability of staff is the biggest weakness of the branch and that action needs to be taken. Text IQ can be used to analyze this further. We see that there is a large number of people talking about availability of staff, and the sentiment is typically negative. The most important thing is that I take action once Qualtrics has identified the area for me to focus on. I can click on Create Action Plan here, and I can do this directly within the dashboard.
All right. Thank you everyone for your insights. I think that was quite a comprehensive session. So thank you all for joining us and bringing all that content together. So while you guys were presenting, we managed to round up some questions coming in through the website and our social media channels. And because we have so many of you here today, we have an entire panel, I'm just going to make sure I'm kind of throwing the right questions at the right person. So I think the first question that I'd like to start with, Kodin, perhaps this is something that you'd like to jump into. I have a question that came in that asks, how would you suggest in light of the current situation banks with legacy systems need to do in order to get to digitally transform themselves, and how long do you think it's going to take?
Right. Now, digital transformation, we need to be a bit aware it's also becoming a buzzword. The solution is not the technology itself, but you need to start from understanding exactly what are the problems that you want to solve. And technology can help. So for instance, digitizing an existing journey that it's having a lot of issues across the touch points doesn't make sense, because you will just replicate the current mess at an exponential scale. And that's another definition of chaos. So you really need to go down to pick up the top critical problems that you want to solve, and then look around what can help you to solve that problem. Can be technology, can be a change in current policies. The drive of the digital transformation, it's also depending very much on the regulations. You need to actively engage the central bank, and here in the region, I think we have different examples. I worked 5 years in Saudi Arabia, and the central bank over there was highly proactive and deployed this sandbox for different banks to play when they are testing new technologies, which was and providing a policy around how to deploy these new products and services. How long it will take, it depends very much on the maturity level where you are right now. on average, I wouldn't say it can go below 3 years.
Great. Kodin, I think what you said was really interesting. It's not just about the technology, right? And I have a question that's actually building on to that talks about mindset of banks. So perhaps maybe Rami and Kashif, between you guys, you can take this one. I have Meeta who's asking this question on our LinkedIn page. How difficult is it to change the mindset of banks and convincing them to adopt such new technology to enable this customer experience management system? So in your experience of working with banks, can you talk a little bit about how do you help them to adopt their mindset?
So Kash, if you don't mind, I'll take this question. So it actually depends quite a lot from who your customer is. So you have some banks which have a different maturity than other banks. Some banks perceive their retail network as being the primary value proposition, and then they resist into digitization and focusing on their digital channels. How do we go forward in convincing the leadership of organizations to go more into digital and adopting state-of-the-art technology? It's mainly through voice of customer data. So from the experience data, once you have a reliable source of data, you can go and tell your CEO, listen, this is what your customer is saying. If you do not invest in your digital channels, then this would be the repercussion, because data doesn't lie at the end of the day.
Right. Kashif, do you want to build on that? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so Rami is absolutely right. The best way to actually convince or have a meaningful dialogue with our customers is actually using the tool by itself. So I mean, and we're not just using it for a particular product or a service that a bank is providing. We're actually doing it across market segment. So at SAP, we're actually looking at SMEs as a segment and looking at SMEs across different countries in the region and asking them through the tool as to what do they expect from financial services. What is it that they demand? Because there seems to be a huge gap, especially in SME, in our MENA region, for example, and even Africa, for that matter, as to the definition of SME and how do you cater to SMEs in when it comes to financial services. So we're actually being proactive at SAP and gathering that data and then debuting it to our customers across different countries to say, this is what the demand is from the market. And we have then suggestions as to how do you want to proceed ahead,
Kashif, so speaking of SMEs, we do have, I know we do have a few business owners joining us today, watching this session. How do you see the expectations of a business owner or an SME owner changing post the current situation when it comes to choosing their banking partner?
So that's a great question. So now SMEs more than ever, obviously, it's because they have been. A banker once told me the biggest problem with the SMEs is that they don't know how to ask for money. So that's you take that example into a segment where SMEs tend to look at the bank that they have been working with on a personal level, and they go and start working with them on a business level. I think the SMEs ought to demand the right level of products and above all the flexibility of services from the banks. That's the most important factor. You cannot simply fit a standard product that has been working for a long time for a large SME for a micro SME, and for a micro SME the products will be very different. It's not about payroll for them, it's about business productivity, it's about empowerment of maintaining their books in a profound manner. So to me, if I'm an SME, I would go to a bank that has the right level of flexibility to cater to my needs and wrapping around products to fit me.
Super. So jumping on to the next question, I have OJ who's asking us online, what would you advise we can do with regards to managing customer experience during the current times where the contact center capacity is very limited, obviously, due to the lockdown and the current restrictions, and customers in some cases aren't being responded to very quickly. Kodin, perhaps this is something you'd like to address?
Yeah, I'll pick up this one. It's a very good and very valid question nowadays. Very simple. First of all, you need to identify what are the key services that people are asking these days, and enable as many of them as a self-service. So, for instance, you can add a couple of services to IVR, so you don't need actually to spend long time in the queue. If you still need to spend some time to talk to an actual agent, set up the expectation to your customers by providing instantly what is the average waiting time if you are still willing to talk to an agent. Also be careful when you reach to that touch point, a customer talking to an agent. The agent should be able to solve that problem on the spot, not to actually reroute the problem to a separate department. So those agents should be fully empowered to tackle the core services. I would say these are the couple of things: self-service, setting expectations, and empowering the call center people to do more on the spot.
Great. Another question that I'd like to open this to the entire team here. I don't think we touched upon security and privacy, because this is a big conversation across the globe right now, particularly within the banking and the financial sector. What are your thoughts on that? Kashif, maybe you'd like to start and jump in.
Yeah. So look, I mean, from a compliance perspective or from a security and privacy perspective, that's absolutely important. That's always been very important for banks as well as for us in terms of the solutions that we provide to our customers. And so be that may from a regulatory perspective or even a GDPR driven perspective, which might not be admissible in our region as much, but nevertheless, that is something that we take very seriously when we're looking at solutions and empowering our banking customers for that matter.
And to jump in there, I guess from a technology perspective, Qualtrics is used globally, so we're used to having to deal with different regulations in different countries, and there are a lot of simple tools within the platform, things like GDPR compliance, contact frequency, opt-outs, etc. It's worth mentioning that we work with a lot of banks and telcos in particular, not just in the Middle East, but also if you take Russia as an example, and also banks in Germany, etc. So we've been through a lot of rigorous compliance reviews with a lot of organizations, and we're very comfortable with how we kind of deal with PII. So usually it's not a big challenge with the Qualtrics platform.
I can add as well on this one, because internally when we started the implementation of Qualtrics, and because we are running so many surveys, and the central bank here has very strict regulations in terms of the data privacy and security, we worked closely with our risk and compliance people, and going to the central bank and showing them from different angles what are the key actions that we are putting in place. You talk about specific fields to be shared in the cloud. You talk about encryption levels. So having on board from day one compliance and risk people, specialists in IT security, definitely it's helping a lot.
Definitely. And this is applicable to all industries as well. So from banking to telco to healthcare. So it's very important as well to understand your regulations early on.
Great. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you for all that information and all the insights. I see we're approaching the 1 hour mark, so we've gone slightly overboard in terms of time. But the good news is that we've managed to answer all questions that have come in. But to everyone that's watching, just in case we missed a question that you asked or we weren't able to address your question correctly, we will be sharing details of our experts here on the screen today. And you can get in touch with us at any time for any questions or queries that you have. Once again, thank you everyone. Thank you all for joining us today, and we hope you had an enjoyable session. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe, everyone. Bye-bye.